Poppy Playtime had it all: NFTs, stolen ideas, NFTs, a shady past, and even NFTs for only $14.99. Now that's a steal. But how did Poppy Playtime go from a tech demo walking simulator to one of the most praised and best indie mascot horror games ever? Well, there's only one way to find out. Welcome to the redemption of Poppy Playtime. Before I really pick this game apart and leave no pieces, it is important to know the people behind it all. Mob Entertainment, previously known as Mob Games, is a team responsible for Poppy Playtime, and they're made up of many independent developers. Together they created Poppy Playtime Chapters 1, 2 and 3, as well as the spin-off Project Playtime and a Roblox game. Though it is important to say that I will not cover the Roblox spin-off game, as I don't really find it relevant to the video. With an initial $5 price tag, a merge button on the title screen, and developers with shady pasts, Poppy Playtime Chapter 1 had one of the roughest starts to any indie project ever. And I'm not even talking about the merge, but the controversy behind this game. Let me quickly go over it. First off, I will keep things short, but be sure to comment on things I missed in the comments. Anyways, after Chapter 1's release and during the crazy NFT hype, Mob Entertainment had the great idea to sell reused poster assets for a little bit of lore. And that's for $15 a pop. Admittedly, nobody forced you to buy them, but it did show hints of greed. After that, even more stuff came out that made a few of the developers, mainly the higher ups, look like genuinely bad and manipulative people. Such as one of them making fun and genuinely being a dick to a young and smaller animator in the old Minecraft animation community. And especially how they took down the apology tweet right off of Twitter, which is just not necessary. Like, why even do that? So I want to make clear that for the rest of this video I want to separate art from artists and let you know that not all of the developers are bad people. But for now, let's get into Poppy Playtime Chapter 1. Now, ignoring the merge button on the title screen, you're met with this cool pre-game starting menu, I guess you could call it, which is also prevalent in all other chapters. It quickly gives you a tease of what you need to know before getting into the game, similar to the back of a book. Also, did you know that that is called a blurb? After a quick promotional video introducing us to Poppy, you're met with the main entrance room of the factory this game takes place in. While not unique today, Chapter 1 is this toy factory style it keeps in all other games, with a little bit of red, yellow and blue painted all around the facility. Just like in the starting screen, we're giving a little bit of lore from multiple tapes scattered all around with actual voice actors in them, not just the developers. Sorry, Scott. A big factor that is in all of the other chapters are the puzzles you need to complete to progress. While not necessarily hard, they're quite innovative with their ideas, such as the train colors corresponding to the color codes to open the door. Oh, and there also is... I'd say the grab pack is more the face of Poppy Playtime than Huggy or Poppy or any character itself. With the grab pack you can open doors, high five Huggy, grab stuff, low five Huggy, and redirect power circuits to complete puzzles. But like I said, the puzzles aren't that hard, but it did get me confused during the gameplay recording I did for this video. Yeah, that was embarrassing. But if you aren't an utter complete idiot like myself, you shouldn't be having any problems when solving these puzzles. Though I probably hear some of you asking,
where's the horror? You said indie mascot horror games, but where's the horror?
Yes, horror. There's plenty of horror, my friend. Unlike forced jump scares in other indie titles, you only get jump scared by your own mistakes. Jump scare I said because you couldn't forget the face of Poppy Playtime Chapter 1, Huggy Wuggy. We've definitely seen him before. The big, lanky, blue, huggable blue, tall, huggable cute. What even is he? Let's just say the big, huggable humanoid creature. Huggy's design for sure was one of a kind, because let's just say the impact of Huggy's design was gigantic. Lastly, I'd quickly like to go over the chase scene at the end of the game. So, right after you're done with a puzzle, you're standing in front of a hallway with the end of it covered by a big, dark shadow. With both doors locked, there's only one way to go. Immediately after, the music begins to get louder and more frantic as your only option of escape is tightly squeezing through the vent. And right after you think yourself, come multiple jump scares showing you the direction you shouldn't go. And the sense of fear is prevalent throughout the whole chase sequence, be it through the intense music or the pitter-patter of Huggy right behind you. Realistically, you're never in real danger when you know where to go, but it still is a very creepy atmosphere. Yeah, also Huggy dies at the end of the chase scene. Damn. Oh, and I know I already said lastly, but lastly, I need to talk about the music and sound design in Chapter 1. Now, I'm not an expert in sound design by any means, but every part of music is perfectly placed. Be it the quiet ambience in the first section, the little jingle you hear when you first see Huggy, the calm music after entering the Mega Friend Room, or Poppy's jingle at the end of the game. So, Chapter 1. Honestly, not a bad start to the series, and I wish it didn't cost $5 on release because I think that's where most of the hate came from, beside like the controversy. Yeah, it's free now, but you probably get where I'm coming from. Nevertheless, I really think Chapter 1, though missing a bit of content, is perfectly fine. Also, I forgot to mention that a big update/remake was released for Chapter 1 that fixed a few of the problems and overall had good quality of life changes. Only a little more than half a year later, we already saw the sequel to Poppy Playtime Chapter 1, conveniently called Poppy Playtime Chapter 2. Speaking of, can somebody make a count in the comments of how many times I said the word Poppy, because that feels like a lot of times. Anyways, oh boy was Poppy Playtime Chapter 2 way better than Poppy Playtime Chapter 1. While there are still things I don't like, the pros outweigh the cons way more. Oh, and remember when I said Chapter 1 is now free and doesn't cost $5 anymore? Well, Chapter 2 is 10 bucks. I mean, fair enough, the game plays around 2 hours for your first playthrough, when Chapter 1 was around 30 minutes. However, for me, since I played both games multiple times, I completed Chapter 1 in a little bit more than 10 minutes, and Chapter 2 in a little less than an hour. But prices and gameplay hours aside, let's actually talk about the darn game that somewhat started the redemption of Poppy Playtime. Similar to Chapter 1, we have a merge button. We have the little pre-game starting menu quickly summarizing the end of Chapter 1 and what you do now. One advertisement for this chapter's antagonist, who we'll go into later. You're met with the exact room you ended in Chapter 1, but now with Poppy mysteriously missing. A quick introduction to Chapter 2's swinging mechanic later, we find Elliot Ludwig's office. Who's Elliot Ludwig and why didn't I cover the logo of both games? I guess now's the time then. In Chapter 1's tapes, we learn about the head of innovation, Dave Pierre, and that if you're listening to these tapes, you're trespassing. Playtime Co. specializes in children's toys, such as Huggy Wuggy for example. In another tape, we learn that all of the toys in this factory are made for orphans and for children alike. Following that, we meet a Playtime Co. employee named Stella. Since she was a kid, she's been really into playing with toys, and that's why she's currently working at the Playtime Co. facility. Or should I say, was working. Also remember that the big Huggy Wuggy is supposed to be a toy, but left blood stains when falling down the endless pits. There may be more stuff going on than you think. In the last VHS of Chapter 1, we learn about Experiment 1006, the prototype. But don't worry, we'll learn more about him later. Now in Chapter 2, just where we left off, we see a lot of children's drawings in Elliot Ludwig's room. Next to the VHS, there's a note about another experiment, this time Experiment 814. This one's mentioning an experiment with a live rat that was fed 3 portions daily for 2 weeks. After the 2 weeks, the rat was killed and submerged into a poppy flower gel mixture. 1 week later, still submerged in the mixture, the scientists gave the rat an electric shock in an attempt to revive it. Nothing happened. What you can take from that is that the scientists are trying to revive the dead with a poppy flower. Now in the VHS, we actually learn about Elliot Ludwig, the founder of Playtime Co. That sure was a low dump. Let's get back to the gameplay. While walking through the factory at the start, from time to time you can actually hear Poppy talking very quietly. That is until you meet her.
Oh, sorry.
Well yeah, you can actually meet Poppy in this game. And she's actually pretty cool. I really love how she... Well, that's a good segue to talk about Chapter 2's main antagonist. Voiced by the lovely Elsie Lovelock, you may know from other indie projects such as Uzi from Murder Drones or the Glowing Queen from the amazing digital Circus. We meet Mommy Longlegs. Now, I have to be honest, you either love her or you hate her. While some people hate how her dialogue is written somewhat sensual slash sexual,
Mommy knows other ways to play with you.
the others love how you don't see her as much of a threat because she's doing exactly that. At first she seems too nice and caring, but then immediately does a 180 turn and seems pissed off and somewhat psychotic. What do I think? Well, I personally love her just because of that. At first she's talking in a very nice tone but shows that she isn't playing around. But as soon as you do something wrong, all of her nice persona slips off. Also, I love how you can sometimes just see her fake persona showing.
Oh, you did it.
Hooray! Mommy is so
Including that, I just love how you can literally hear mommy kill the other characters when you complete their minigame. Like they're getting punished for not killing you. I mean, you can even see it, that Bonzo and the dead Huggies in the game station. So cool. And yeah, Elsie does the job perfectly. 10 out of 10 voice acting. Here's some of my favorites.
I asked you to play fair, and you cheated! I hate cheaters! Now, we're going to play one last game!
Whoops, wasn't meant to show that yet. I'll come back to that later, but for now we'll continue with the gameplay. In chapter 2 there are 3 kind of 4 main little mini-games, those being musical memory, whack-a-wuggy, statues and hide and seek. In between those are fun little puzzles to make you feel like you're always doing something, which I really like. I say 4 by the way, because some count hide and seek as a 4th minigame and some people don't. Anyways, in musical memory you basically just play a 3D version of Simon Says. But unlike other Simon Says minigames, security bitch, in Poppy Playtime it is perfectly executed. Mainly the main thread looming above you and slowly coming towards, going faster and being louder as you mess up. And the game itself adding more colors each round. Speaking of Bonzo, the way he slowly comes down and how he claps the cymbals faster and faster is just done perfectly. I mean, it even got me to mess up during the recording of the gameplay I did. And oh man, the ending of Musical Memory is so fucking cool.
Round 5. Blue, snowflake, green, turquoise, fine, and question 1, fine, yellow, and heart, orange, snowflake, J, white, yellow, blue, next smiley face, snowflake, and heart.
You may be wondering, why should you even complete those minigames at this point? Well, if you aren't cheesing it and guessing the code, Mommy Longlegs actually gives you one piece of the code after completing each minigame, so hey, she isn't completely useless. However, when it comes to the second minigame, Whack-a-Wuggy, I do have my gripes with this one. While I do like the suspense of hearing the little pitter-patters in each hole, you just can't see shit. And it just leads me to sometimes guessing where the little huggies are. Including that, the minigame is just kinda boring. But that's just a personal opinion of mine. Moving on to statues. While I did have fun walking through the little parkour or noticing the secret way you have to go to progress, Mob Entertainment, can you please fix this minigame, or mainly PJ? I died 2 times because of glitches. The first time PJ was moving at light speed and the second time he got me through a wall. That's just unnecessary. What I did like though is that when you go through the hardest pipe close to the end, you actually get an award / golden collectible statue. Speaking of, can I just say that any game with collectibles automatically gets a 10 out of 10 rating from me? Because each time I find a new collectible I haven't found before is such a nice feeling, you just can't describe it. Also adds more replay value, just saying, wink wink. Enough fanboying over collectibles, let's talk about the last sort of minigame, hide and seek. Hide and seek occurs right as Mommy begins to turn psychotic and pretty much sets off the end of the game. When I first played this game to release, I actually thought that Mommy was chasing me and that kept me on guard for pretty much the rest of the game. Maybe it was just me, but I really like that. While it isn't really a mini game, in hide and seek you just complete puzzles and hide from Mommy until you eventually kill her. Before going back and talking about the story and other factors of this game, let's talk about Chapter 2's puzzles and main gimmicks. Those being the green hand and the ability to swing yourself with your grab hack. First off, the puzzles. A definite step up in quality from Chapter 1. Most of the time you need to power your green hand up with electricity and use it to open doors, or similar to Chapter 1, rewire electricity with both of your hands. But like in Chapter 1, you can skip a few of those if you know how. But that's beside the point. Nevertheless, I think anybody can solve these puzzles with ease. But not saying that the puzzles are lame by any means. Besides the mechanic style puzzles, you also have puzzles where you need to use your brain, like remembering the wires or when you have to create a gear to move forward. overall, pretty solid. Lastly, before I get to the negatives, the sound and level design is top notch, especially how you don't feel boxed in anymore like in chapter 1. It's nice to see that chapter 2 still has these little splashes of color everywhere, such as the blue and purple like PJ's minigame and the red, yellow and blue all around the game station. Okay, now with that out of the way, let's go on to the negatives in a kind of quickfire round. What is up with the crane in bronze room, and why do I have to pull it all throughout the room? Why does mommy talk so much? Like, I get that her character is supposed to keep an eye on you, but like, shut the fuck up. Let me play the fucking game. Speaking of her, what did they do with her? We did not need so many chase sequences. Like, one is enough. And why did chapter 2 feel like a filler episode to chapter 3? Like, you could entirely skip the whole game by just guessing the code and release. Okay, rant over. So, Poppy Playtime Chapter 2. What a step up to Chapter 1 in quality, and you can definitely tell that it slowly marked the beginning of the redemption of Poppy Playtime. But for now, oh man, now the redemption really begins.
Bitch! Go! Go! As far as you can! Why are you just standing there?
After almost 2 years of waiting, we finally got Poppy Playtime Chapter 3 at the end of January 2024. And this game truly started the redemption of Poppy Playtime. Not only is this game longer than both of its predecessors combined, it also changed the indie mascot horror scene forever. Not even the change of pace and gameplay is fantastic, the teasers for it were just exciting everyone even more. Poppy Playtime Chapter 3 definitely was and still is one of the best and greatest indie horror games ever. So without further ado, let's get into Poppy Playtime Chapter 3. Okay, so before talking about the gameplay, let's quickly go over the many changes Mob Entertainment made to make Poppy Playtime Chapter 3 the way it is today. So, first off, unlike the other previous 2 chapters, Chapter 3 was made in Unreal Engine 5, which essentially translates to increased visual quality, but be sure to correct me if need be. Moving on, as you probably noticed by now, the whole tonal and visual changes are incredible. For example, Mob really wanted this game to be a proper horror game, not mascot horror or horror games for kids, proper creepy horror. And you can definitely tell. Firstly, beside the chase in chapter 1 and the death of Mommy Longlegs, you never got creeped out that much. You always were in this sort of safe environment with lots of colors like red, yellow and blue. In chapter 3, those colors are toned down by a lot. We're still in a factory mixed with children's style environments like a school or a play area, but the colors are way more dull and there's less of them. Unlike other games, chapter 3 does not get its horror through cheap jump scares, but lets you, for example, imagine being watched or the horror being built up through the atmosphere or the environment, especially in the Home Sweet Home section we'll get into later. And oh my god, is the sound design peak. But we'll get there when we get there. For now, what actually happens when you boot up the game. What I really like is this new little starting menu you get when starting up the game. In it, you can choose between all 3 chapters with their own little icon, which is such a fun detail. Then when you select chapter 3, you're not with the same boring ass factory, but with Catnap, chapter 3's main antagonist, and him just creepily standing in the hallway, looking right at you. Also, the UI looks different, which is a good plus. And the merge button is gone. Yay! And also, you can't forget the little explanation of what happened and what's going to happen. You know, the blurb. Right. When you click new game, just like in all other chapters, an advert plays, but this time let me actually talk about it because I really do adore it. So, unlike before where we had a literal ad for the main antagonist, this time we have a little cartoon that shows off the smiling critters, with Catnap being the main focus of it. And in this cartoon, we sort of learn about his main gimmick and how he uses red gas to make you fall asleep. It's just done perfectly, like the animation is great, the voice cast is great, and especially the way they all go insane. Now, knowing what and who Catnap actually is, we start off by being thrown into the trash chute by him. Shortly after, we're again being told what effects the poppy gas can have on you, mainly nightmares. We also meet Ollie, our main buddy / guide that talks to us during the whole chapter, basically just telling us where to go, giving us objectives, keys and so on. Let's just hope he won't cross us. Not to mention, we see the train wreck we caused, currently burning, but then Ollie tells us about Playcare and Catnap.
Playcare is straight ahead. It's the home of Catnap, one of the smiling critters. There used to be 8 of them, I think. Now it's just him. Playcare is his church, his hunting ground, whatever he wants it to be.
When we then finally enter the Playcare, Similar to Chapter 2, this is going to be our main hub for the rest of the game. But unlike Chapter 2, the execution here is 1,000 times better, where it doesn't feel like a filler game. Our main 4 access areas are Home Sweet Home, my favorite, the school, the playhouse, and last but not least, the counselor's office. And can I just quickly say how cool the playcare looks? From the outside, it's this giant metal ball, but when we go inside, it's this little town full of nature. Great world building. Honestly, great. Right after we go inside the playcare, we actually find our main objective. That is to divert the red gas from right to left. On top of that, we get one out of the 3 new mechanics, being the purple hand that lets us boost ourselves high into the air. The other mechanics are of course the green hand to divert power, nothing new, the red hand that shoots fireballs, and lastly the gas mask, which is pretty self-explanatory. It lets you walk through the red gas unharmed. And with all of that out of the way, let's finally talk about the 4 major locations. Entering Home Sweet Home, you can already hear the worn out, creaky floorboards when walking. Then you see the red gas, but you don't have the gas mask yet. So what do? Go back, find some other way inside? Nah, just walk through it and hold your breath. After descending the stairs for what feels like minutes, all you see is the same hallway with the same lights and the same walls again and again and again. It's a home for a lot of orphans after all, so you don't think much of it. While walking, you hear a news broadcast talking about the death of a young boy outside of Elliot Ludwig's estate. Including that, the further you go, the more scratch marks you see. Not just scratch marks, cat-like scratch marks. Following the radio static noise, you soon hear a phone call, similar to Ollie's. With nothing else to do, you follow the noise. And then with the feeling of being watched, you answer the call.
You need to run!
Yeah, you aren't just being watched, you're being stalked by Catnap. While trying to escape, you hear things like breathing through a door. Looking inside, you see him, watching you. Banging on a door or even a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. Finally, you find a safe room with beds and a tape you can listen to. And this is where the horror of Home Sweet Home really sets in. If you decide to look away from the screen feeling uneasy, the camera swiftly steps back to the monitor and you're being forced to watch the tape. When finally we get an updated version of Huggy's Chase from Chapter 1. And that was just the introduction to Home Sweet Home. Also, did I mention that you couldn't run throughout the whole section? Also, remember when I said the gas can cause nightmares? Well, that's exactly what happened. Finally, in Home Sweet Home, you're given the task to find little batteries to plug in. 4 to be exact. And I have to say, the way the house is built is so awesome. The decrepit look with the walls losing their paint, or all of Catnap scratching on the walls. Speaking of the old nap, you can actually see him wandering around from time to time, and not just in Home Sweet Home by the way. It really sells its hunting for prey mechanic. Also, sometimes you can hear ambient noises like shuffling or glass being broken. Indirectly saying again that you are not alone. Now, I do have my issues with Home Sweet Home and some other places in Chapter 3. Mainly not the puzzles, but the way you have to find stuff or ways to continue going. Sometimes you're just left alone with no clear objective or where you're supposed to go, which did leave me annoyed at some parts of the game. However, that could just be a me thing, but I still wanted to mention it anyway. But all in all, I really loved Home Sweet Home with their little Easter eggs like Kissy in one of the rooms, or the way you can hear the bear hug statue being rebuilt by the little smiling critters. Yeah, definitely my favorite section. Before even going inside the school, Ollie tells you that Catnap stays far away from it, making it you immediately wonder why. But swiftly after, Ollie tells you something else.
Someone else in there too. Forgot yours.
Friend. I think he was going to say friend. Well, I think that...
This is Miss Delight speaking. Please excuse the interruption. Students, remain in your seats until the bell has rung. And no going in the halls without a hall pass.
Well, I think we found our main antagonist for the school section, Miss Delight. Similar to Catnap, at first you can only see glimpses of her running throughout the school. Doing that, you completely and pretty much only use your green hand, which is great. In a tape we find inside the school, we really get to know Miss Delight as a character and how psychotic she really is. Speaking of her, after you turn on the generator, the must-have Weeping Angel section that every horror game must have begins. Don't know what a Weeping Angel is? Well, essentially the given character only moves when you're not looking at them. Most of the time I'm just tired of it because every game nowadays does it. But honestly, Chapter 3 basically perfects this, because it is not just a Weeping Angel section, it is one combined with puzzles and a chase. So while getting chased you need to turn around, plug in the batteries, or charge your green hand, all while paying attention that Mr. Light isn't too close to you. Personally, this section isn't that hard when you know where to go, but, here comes the but, when you lose sight of her, it's basically game over. So yeah, all in all, what did I find in this cool section of Chapter 3? Again, my only gripes is the overused look-up mechanic in this game. Essentially what that is they hide this grab onto thingy somewhere in some random room you need to find to progress. Which I'm sorry, but it's such a dumb thing to do. Fine if you do it once or twice, but throughout the game, you do this like 5 or 6 times, I don't know, I didn't count. But ignoring that, very fun puzzles and RIP Faster Light. After escaping the school through some weird ass tunnels, we find ourselves at the one place Ollie wonders about, the Playhouse. And that's because we went there unwillingly. So what horrors await us there? Well, how do I say this? Little smiling critters in a fun little bouncy cushiony area. Not the weirdest thing we've ever seen. And kind of underwhelming. I mean, why would Ollie warn us about this place if it's only filled with these little smiling critter babies? Well, if you've never seen Chapter 3, then maybe close your eyes for this next part. Because after you walk through this empty indoor swimming pool section, you find cells of some sort. Empty until...
You're Poppy's angel.
In the last cell, you find Dog Day. Well, the upper part of Dog Day. The last alive, smiling critter, with his arms being held up by belts, almost making him look like he's crucified, and also his insides being held up in place by one belt as well. To find Dog Day like this for the first time is an experience you'll never get to experience twice. Honestly, this alone certifies the redemption of Poppy Playtime. With this, you've shown that we went from childish mascot horror to proper, almost brutal horror. Not even almost, this shit is crazy. And when you think you've seen the worst, with his last breaths, Dog Day tells us, no, begs us to leave the facility before it's too late, until he inevitably gets eaten from the inside by the little, small, smiling critters. And it doesn't even end there, they now inhabit his body and begin to chase you. With loud thumping and the sounds of choking, you get this perfectly done chase scene, with corners being cut off by the little smiling critters, or dead ends falling apart. Until we finally end the section by jumping over a big hole. And man, if that didn't win you over, then I don't know what will. The Playhouse first gives you this false sense of security after you find out that the only thing inside are little plushies easily scared away by the gun mechanic given to you shortly before that, but then showing you Dog Day's gruesome death. However, with that aside, the puzzles in the Playhouse are nothing to write home about. Not bad of course, but pretty simple to do. The focus on this section really lies on you being chased around and defending yourself from the little smiling critters. Also again, maybe just a me thing, but I died too many times on the Dog Day chase because I never knew where to go. Even though it was my second time playing Chapter 3. Nevertheless, the Playhouse is overall very good, but Dog Day makes it just perfect. Last but certainly not least, we have the counselor's office, with the one and only Catnap. Which means I can finally talk about how much I freaking adore this little silly cat. Multiple times throughout the whole chapter and from multiple characters, we learn about Catnap and how he's a predator hunting its prey. How he loves to hide and stalk its prey, then taking away everything you have to defend yourself from him. And when you're at your most vulnerable, he'll strike. Along with that, Catnap sees the prototype, I'll go over later, as his god, and that he will hunt down any and every heretic. When it comes to his design, it's a straight up 10 out of 10. The big creepy smile he has and that lanky skinny body needing to be fed is straight up peak. Additionally, the way he actually does what we hear of him, i.e. stalking you in Home Sweet Home, or as we'll see later, taking away everything you have to defend yourself. Lastly, I do like his one voice line we hear, but it does sound like a bit edgy, like listen to this. fucking edgelord. Also, when talking about him, you can't forget his scary ass nightmare design we see at the end of the game, which is truly nightmare fuel. But that's enough about Catnap. What about the counselor's office? Well, even though I think it's good, it definitely is my least favorite section in the whole chapter. Keep in mind that I still like it way more than most of the things we talked about in previous chapters, just to let you know. But why don't I like it that much? Well, honestly, until about the very end of the office, it is just not really memorable. Sure, the puzzles are nice and confusing on the first playthrough, the way the offices are presented so lifeless and empty look fantastic, but in comparison to the previous sections, it's just a bit too boring. Don't get me wrong, I understand how it's meant to be toned down, but it's just eh. Also, again, there was one part where he randomly needed to look up to get a key. Like, why, mob? Why? That aside, what I do love is the catnap jump scare at the end of the office section, because I'll tell you, on the first time playing this game, the jump scare scared the living shit out of me. Now with all of those amazing sections out of the way, there are still a few little things I need to talk about. First off, the boss fight is very well done. How you can shoot your flares at Catnap to make sure he's real, and how you progressively lose your sense of security as you slowly need to cover all 5 sides. All in all, the fight isn't really that hard if you know what to do, but hey, isn't every game like that? Also, the end cutscene fucking slaps. I love how he tries to kill you with gas, but apparently didn't pay attention in school. Me neither. Because electricity, /fire and gas don't mix well. Or how he gets killed by Experiment 1006 in a more brutal way than Mommy in chapter 2. Speaking of Mr. Experiment, it's finally time I talk about him. Essentially, it is pretty clear that he's going to be the big bad of Poppy Playtime. The first big experiment gone wrong. An experiment way too smart, someone that'll definitely be the main antagonist in Poppy's last chapter. But hey, that's probably a bit far from now, so enjoy what we have currently. Closing off Poppy Playtime chapter 3, I think Mob Entertainment peaked with this game. Honestly, I do not know how you can make a game like this even better. Sure, I did have my problems here and there, but honestly, that's an easy fix. The updated mission objective UI you see sometimes is such a great add, especially at the end of the game where it simply says to run. Maybe make it have an option to toggle it off, but that's just a personal opinion of mine. And lastly, the visuals and music/soundtrack is done to such a perfect degree. The environments are perfect, as you can probably tell from what I've said, and the soundtrack does not miss. Truly, you have to experience it for yourself. But with that said, that pretty much covers Poppy Playtime chapter 3. And yeah, that also pretty much concludes the redemption of Poppy Playtime. Beside everything that happened, like the controversies for example, I do really love these games and hope to witness them thrive in the future. I and some of my friends especially love how FNAF and Poppy Playtime started out as opposites that have now both switched. What I mean by that is that you can tell that FNAF has, somewhat recently, become entirely for kids, while Poppy Playtime has done the complete opposite. I mean, in which FNAF game will you see something like what happened to Dog Day? Honestly, never. Other than that, when it comes to the future of Poppy Playtime, I do think, although the recent controversy for example, from what I've gathered, they should be getting things under control. And hey, we also have Project Playtime to play in the meantime. Besides that, I would really appreciate it if you'd subscribe and turn on post notifications to not miss my next upload, in hopefully less than 8 months. Also, if you want to support me further, I do have channel memberships now, so you can check them out if you're interested. Lastly, please follow me on Twitter, I need that Twitter clout. Anyways, that wraps up the redemption of Poppy Playtime. With that said, till next time.